Good morning. You're listening to WVUD HD2 Newark, The Basement. I'm Zach Davis, and this is Our Brief Hour, where we celebrate the poetry and prose that makes our brief hour on this earth a beautiful one. Today I'm joined again by Alexa Farnese.
Hi.
And we're going to look at something that is a particular favorite of Alexa's. We'll be looking at Shakespeare's sonnets. And this is going to be a multi-part undertaking because obviously Shakespeare wrote 154 of them. But Alexa, for one of her acting classes recently, memorized and recited Sonnet 111. Is that the first time you've done it?
Yep.
And you really enjoyed it?
Oh yeah, I really, really enjoyed it.
So let's hear it before we start. Let's hear Sonnet 111.
Okay. Oh, for my sake do you with fortune chide, the guilty goddess of my harmful deeds. That did not better for my life provide than public means which public manners breeds. Thence comes it that my name receives a brand, and almost thence my nature is subdued to what it works in, like the dyer's hand. Pity me then, and wish I were renewed, whilst, like a willing patient, I will drink poisons of Isel against my strong infection. No bitterness I will bitter think, nor double penance to correct correction. Pity me then, dear friend, and I assure ye, even that your pity is enough to cure me.
And so give us the quick rundown. What is that about?
Well, I did some research on it, and apparently it's about God basically gave him a bad deal of cards. Like, his luck is just not there, and that's the reason for the way he's been behaving, and being in the public all the time isn't helping him either. So he's asking his friend to pity him and just to feel sorry for him, and that's all he would need to get better. He just wants a friend, I guess, or his friend's back.
But he's talking specifically, like he mentions fortune. He's talking specifically about something that he's doing, but that he can't prevent himself from not doing. That he can't prevent himself from doing.
Because it was like he's blaming it on like his fortune. He's blaming it on his like he was born into it, kind of. Like,
right.
I guess it's not his fault. It's like just the way the cards he was dealt, he couldn't help it.
Right. And the first time I heard you do this, I said that some people think this is Shakespeare kind of lamenting the fact that he went into theater and acting because at this time it was still sort of a marginal profession. People didn't respect it a whole lot, and you said you didn't agree with that.
Oh, well, I didn't agree at first, but then, like I said, like when he says in the sonnet that public, it isn't helping him. The fact that he's in public
Right.
all the time,
Right.
like that makes it worse for him, obviously, because of what all people's opinions on actors and writers back then weren't so good. But
so you came around a little bit.
I did come around a little bit.
All right. So what we're going to do is start at the top and see how far we get. This is a sonnet sequence, which means it's meant to tell one story. And in the 1500s, really, the sonnet originated in Italy with Petrarch, and it was all about talking about love, and specifically the love of a man for a woman who was unattainable. And there are very definite characteristics to this genre, right? And then it came over to England once England started becoming more of a player on the global scene, and the English adored it, and they sort of co-opted it for themselves, and it became the genre to write in. If you were anyone of note, you would have to write a sonnet sequence to kind of make your bones. And Shakespeare waited pretty late to do his. In true Shakespeare form, he definitely throws some curveballs at you. The biggest of which is that the first 127 sonnets are addressed to a fair youth, a male, not a female. And of course, it's interesting because you said Shakespeare was saying this, right? The speaker in these poems isn't necessarily the poet himself, but a lot of people interpret it that way. Or at least that this is reflecting something that's as true for Shakespeare as it is for the person who's talking. So let's it's all one big story, but there are definite sort of story arcs, just like a TV show or something. So that we're going to start with the first 17, which are all an address to the fair youth because he won't have sex with any women. right? And there, I mean, so like there are tons and tons of masturbation jokes. Um, and I think at first let's just switch off. So take the first one for us.
Okay.
Sonnet 1.
From the fairest creatures we desire increase, that thereby beauty's rose might never die. But as the riper should by time decrease, his tender air might bear his memory. But thou contracted to thine own bright eyes, feedest thy light's flame with self-sustained fuel, making a famine where abundance lies. Thyself thy foe, to thy sweet self too cruel. Thou that art now the world's fresh ornament, and only herald to the gaudy spring, within thine own bud buryest thy content, and tender churl makest waste in niggarding. Pity the world, or else this glutton be, to eat the world's due by the grave in thee.
Right, so this is all about the young boy isn't he isn't giving back to the world what he should be. In other words, more of himself, and you can see you can see mentions about his self-love everywhere, right? Like he's feeding his light's flame with self-substantial fuel, and he's within thine own bud, burying his content. Like, okay, it gets even worse eventually, but already we're seeing mentions of this young man's beauty that seem kind of awkward to us in modern times. Like this is not a bro talking to a bro, right? He's calling him the fairest creature, right? He's beauty's rose. Right, I can't imagine, two guys watching football and calling each other beauty's rose. And so the question that everyone is asked about these sonnets, and it's not the only question to ask, but it is kind of a substantial one, is what is the relationship between the speaker and the fair youth? Is it homosexual love? Is it like just jaw-dropping adoration? Like we might say man crush these days. What is it? So, keep an eye out for that. So here we go. Here's number 2. And, like, if you reading or anyone listening gets the sense that Shakespeare is being a little repetitive here, like, that's a very excusable thing to think. The first 17, it's like, okay, we get the picture. All right, Sonnet 2. When 40 winters shall besiege thy brow and dig deep trenches in thy beauty's field, thy youth's proud livery, so gazed on now, will be a tottered weed of small worth held. Then being asked where all thy beauty lies, where all the treasure of thy lusty days, to say within thine own deep sunken eyes were an all-eating shame and thriftless praise. How much more praise deserved thy beauty's use, if thou couldst answer, this fair child of mine shall sum my count and make my old excuse, proving his beauty by succession thine. This were to be new made when thou art old, and see thy blood warm when thou feelst it cold. And so it doesn't take long at all for Shakespeare to start hitting on the fear of aging and time. The time as the enemy, right? This guy isn't just weathering 40 winters, they're besieging him.
Yeah, maybe he's envious of the boy's youth.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe that's why he writes so much about him.
I think that's certainly, one reason why. All right. Sonnet 3.
Look in thy glass until the face thou viewest now is the time that face should form another, whose fresh repair if now thou not renewest, thou dost beguile the world, unbless some mother. For where is she so fair whose unearned womb disdains the tillage of thy husbandry? Or who is he so fond will be the tomb of his self-love to stop posterity? Thou art thy mother's glass, and she in thee calls back the lovely April of her prime. So thou through windows of thine age shalt see, despite of wrinkles, this thy golden time. But if thou live, remembered not to be, die single, and thine image dies with thee.
You know what? Let's not even call out the numbers. Let's just read it as one block. I wonder if that would make it interesting. Yeah. I mean, hopefully it's interesting anyway. Unthrifty loveliness, why dost thou spend upon thyself thy beauty's legacy? Nature's bequest gives nothing, but doth lend, and being frank, she lends to those are free. Then, beauteous niggard, why dost thou abuse the bounteous largesse given thee to give? Profitless usurer, why dost thou use so great a sum of sums, yet canst not live? For having traffic with thyself alone, thou of thyself thy sweet self dost deceive. Then how, when nature calls thee to be gone, what acceptable audit canst thou leave? Thy unused beauty must be tombed with thee, which used lives the executor to be. I mean, and this one is really overt, right? Like, he's spending upon his self. Like, you know, you might as well be spending upon thy sock, thy beauty's legacy. And of course, he works in abuse too. Like, you know, it's one of the euphemisms for masturbation, isn't it?
Those hours that with gentle work did frame the lovely gaze where every eye doth dwell, will play the tyrants to the very same, in that unfair which fairly doth excel. For never resting time leads summer on to hideous winter, and confounds him there. Sap checked with frost, and lusty leaves quite gone, beauty o'er-snowed, and barrenness everywhere. Then were not summer's distillation left, a liquid prisoner pent in walls of glass. Beauty's effect with beauty were bereft, nor it, nor no remembrance what it was. But flowers distilled, though they with winter meet, least but their show, their substance still lives sweet.
What do you think he means when he says a liquid prisoner? I think that's a really interesting line. I mean, obviously, I think in one sense he's talking about semen, right?
Oh, yeah.
Then we're not summer's distillation.
Barrenness, like
left.
Oh, yeah.
But it's not just that. Like, he's also, I mean, he uses seasonal metaphors all the time.
Yeah.
Like, they never go away. And, I mean, it's amazing throughout this how obsessed he is with time.
Mm-hmm. And even in a lot of his sonnets, he talks about how he, like, will live forever because, like, in his sonnets. It's
right.
like he's obsessed with being immortal.
Right.
Or he wants to be immortal, which he kind of succeeded in, almost.
What, Shakespeare?
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's interesting that from all that we can tell, what Shakespeare, like, he thought that his sonnets were going to be the thing that survived him, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, in a lot of senses, he thought about the plays as the way to pay the bills, at least early in his career. And the sonnets were always going to keep him immortal. Like, people were going to remember Shakespeare for his sonnets, which we think is so bizarre because, like, well, you know, well, there's a lot of respect for the sonnets and people adore them and think they're masterful. Like, come on, Hamlet, right? Mm-hmm. You know, I'm going to remember Shakespeare for Hamlet as much as I remember him for Shall I Compare Thee to a Summer's Day. And he did kind of reverse that, or at least revise that attitude the later he got in his life. But I just think it's fascinating, and we definitely hear him say, like, this will be your monument. This is what's lasting forever. And this is one of the things that I have to offer you, right? Like, this is why you should be grateful to me. Because throughout this, we get the sense that the speaker is kind of like this sad third wheel, you know? Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, especially later on when we meet the third character in this little drama. But he definitely feels like he's inadequate compared to this beautiful youth. And the youth has, you know, he has the edge over the speaker. Then let not winter's ragged hand deface in thee thy summer, ere thou be distilled. Make sweet some vial, treasure thou some place with beauty's treasure ere it be self-killed. That use is not forbidden usury, which happy is those that pay the willing loan. Thence for thyself to breed another thee, or 10 times happier, be it 10 for 1. 10 times thyself were happier than thou art, if 10 of thine 10 times refigured thee. Then what could death do if thou shouldst depart, leaving thee living in posterity? Be not self-willed, for thou art much too fair to be death's conquest, and make worms thine heir.
Lo, in the Orient, when the gracious light lifts up his burning head, each under eye doth homage to his new appearing sight, serving with looks his sacred majesty. And having climbed the steep up heavenly hill, resembling strong youth in his middle age, yet mortal looks adore his beauty still, attending on his golden pilgrimage. But when from highmost pitch with weary car, like feeble age, he reeleth from the day, the eyes, for duteous, now converted are from his low tract, and look another way. So thou, thyself outgoing in thy noon, unlooked undiest, unless thou get a son. This one's I don't even know what that one's talking about.
Well, okay, let's take a look at it really quick. So, when the gracious light lifts up his burning head, right, sun, each under eye doth homage to his new appearing sight, serving with looks his sacred majesty. I think each under eye means each person under the sun is looking at the sun and doing homage to the sun, right? And like, who's the sun? The beautiful youth.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, like, if you don't understand one of the poems, the first thing to do is look at the last two lines, the couplet.
Yeah.
Because they're like a nice little...
Like, I thought it was about something else, and then it, like, I kept, like, I was like, wait, maybe it's not about what I think it's about.
Well, what did you think it was about?
I thought it was about, like, death at first, actually. Like, when the gracious light lifts up his burning head, like, maybe, like, when you, like, go, like, when you go into, like, your afterlife. But then I was like, oh, wait, no, he's talking about a person, and then I just kept getting confused.
It's always good to assume that he's talking about more than one thing, right? That's one of the marks of a skilled and subtle author.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things that you have to do for a sonnet sequence, like, how many times can you say "I love you" and "you're awesome"? You have to kind of choose all these different ideas and play them out in a sonnet or two sonnets or five sonnets, because otherwise you're going to run out of stuff to say, right? So this one is like, you're the sun. And, you know, a later one is going to be like, you're a tree. And, you know, it's just going to be like, well, like, let's see how many things we can compare this awesome little kid to. Like, this, you know, I hope to God that this kid, when he got these sonnets, you know, of course, like the fictional kid, there are speculations about who was the actual kid, and there are a few suggestions. But it seems fairer just to say, this is a character. Right? It's not necessarily Shakespeare writing to the Earl of Southampton or anything like that.
It could have been multiple people.
Right.
Like, just youth in general, maybe. Like, there was a few people that...
Or no one at all. You know,
or
personally,
no one,
I like to believe that what Shakespeare is doing mainly was trying to be provocative. Like, everyone else is writing sonnets to their beautiful lover, female. So what am I going to do to screw with people's heads and make sure I'm really remembered? I'm going to write it to a beautiful male and let them figure out what that means. And of course, people have spent the next 400 years trying to figure out what the heck it meant. Music to hear. Why hear'st thou music sadly? Sweets with sweets war not. Joy delights in joy. Why lovest thou that which thou receivest not gladly, or else receivest with pleasure thine annoy? If the true concord of well-tuned sounds, by unions married, do offend thine ear, they do but sweetly chide thee, who confounds in singleness the parts that thou shouldst bear. Mark how one string, sweet husband to another, strikes each and each by mutual ordering, resembling sire and child and happy mother, who all in one pleasing note do sing, whose speechless song, being many, seeming one, sings this to thee, thou single wilt prove none.
Seems like he's saying, I guess I'm trying to like it's more like a collective, like saying like it's better to be collective, like to like not be like it's better to do things like as like in a group and like alone, like listening to music alone, like so, like he's comparing it to like music and singing, something like that. Right. And you mentioned earlier that you got a pop filter for your birthday, right? Well, I like my microphone with a pop filter and like an amp and stuff. Yeah. Right. You're a musician. What do you play? I play guitar, piano, violin, clarinet, flute. But I mostly just stick with guitar and piano. Right. And I sing. Are you in a band or anything like that? No, but I write my own music, and I mean, I'm on iTunes. Oh my God, please don't look me up. That was my EP from when I was 17. But I'm actually planning on doing my full album this summer. That's very cool. By yourself, like singer-songwriter? Yeah. So you better than most have a sense for the feeling of
of concord in harmony. This interesting sort of resonance you get in the ear when you have like a perfect fifth or a perfect fourth and it's right in tune, right? One of the things we always had to do, one of the things we always had to do at conservatory was, at least for wind instruments, something called pitch bends to make sure we're perfectly in tune, because one of the things with any tuning system, like currently we use something called equal temperament, is that no two notes on any instrument are going to be perfectly the right distance from each other. And of course on a guitar, right, or on a violin, you're never going to make sure, like, you're never going to put your finger exactly on the right place, on any fret to get it exactly in tune. So you've got to be adjusting constantly. And when you slide it into that perfect distance, like the major thirds especially, you get this really fascinating ring, right? And it's like you can tell when it's in tune. Fifths are the same way, because it sounds like kind of icky, and then it's just this kind of sudden, like it feels like it gets louder.
It sounds like one sound.
Yeah, exactly. So that's what he's talking about here. Yeah. That when you hit that perfect spot, there are things working together that all feel like one union.
Yeah, that makes sense. I got all what he was talking about, but I didn't know how to put it into words. But that makes sense.
Yeah, and it's fascinating to me to read how people, and Shakespeare especially, but I mean Philip Sidney does the same thing. How they talk about music in this period, because it's all about strings vibrating, right? And it's all and the way when they vibrate just right, the concord is so nice.
Is it for fear to wet a widow's eye, that thou consumest thyself in single life? Ah, if thou issueless shalt hap to die, the world will wail thee like a makeless wife. The world will be thy widow, and still weep that thou no form of thee hast left behind. When every private widow well may keep by children's eye her husband's shape in mind. Look what an unthrift in the world doth spend shifts but his place, for still the world enjoys it. But beauty's waste hath in the world's an end, and kept unused the user so destroys it. No love towards others in that bosom sits, that on himself such murderous shame commits.
For shame deny that thou bear'st love to any, who for thyself art so unprovident. Grant, if thou wilt, thou art beloved of many, but that thou none lovest is most evident. For thou art so possessed with murderous hate, that 'gainst thyself thou stick'st not to conspire, seeking that beauteous roof to ruinate, which to repair should be thy chief desire. O, change thy thought, that I may change my mind. Shall hate be fairer lodge than gentle love? Be as thy presence is, gracious and kind, or to thyself at least kind-hearted prove. Make thee another self, for love of me, that beauty still may live in thine or thee. As fast as thou shalt wane, so fast thou growest in one of thine, from that which thou departest. And that fresh blood which youngly thou bestow'st, thou may call thine, when thou from youth convertest. Herein lives wisdom, beauty, and increase, without this folly, age, and cold decay. If all were minded so, the times should cease, and 80 years would make the world away. Let those whom nature hath not made for store, harsh, featureless, and rude, barrenly perish. Look whom she best endowed, she gave the more, which bounteous gift thou shouldst in bounty cherish. She carved thee for her seal, and meant thereby thou shouldst print more, not let that copy die.
When I do count the clock that tells the time, and see the brave day sunk in hideous night, when I behold the violet past prime, and sable curls all silvered or with white, when lofty trees I see barren of leaves, which erst from heat did canopy the herd, and summer's green all girded up in sheaves, borne on the bier with white and bristly beard, then of thy beauty do I question meek, that thou among the wastes of time must go, since sweets and beauties do themselves forsake and die as fast as they see others grow. And nothing 'gainst time's scythe can make defense, save breed to brave him when he takes thee hence.
So, and this is the first time, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, this is the first time we hear time as a person, right?
Yeah, it's usually in the weather before. He would explain time oh, 40 winters from now. Like,
Mm-hmm.
he usually tried talking about time, not as a person.
Right. And of course, time's scythe, like what do we see? We see the Grim Reaper.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that you were yourself, but love, you are no longer yours, that you yourself here live. Against this coming end you should prepare, and your sweet semblance to some other give. So should that beauty, which you hold in lease, find no determination. Then you were yourself again, after yourself's decrease, when your sweet issue your sweet form should bear, who lets so fair a house fall to decay, which husbandry and honor might uphold, against the stormy gusts of winter's day, and barren rage of death's eternal cold. Oh, none but unthrifts! Dear my love, you know you had a father. Let your son say so. So, what's notable about this particular poem? This is Sonnet 13, I think. Yeah.
I feel like it's just like the same thing he's been talking about for all these,
Right.
for all the previous
Yeah,
months,
of course.
Um,
Here's the biggie. This is the first time he explicitly calls the fair youth, love.
mm-hmm.
Dear my love, you know you had a father, right? So this is the first time love gets introduced in the context of the speaker's relation to the kid.
So you are no longer yours. So is that Shakespeare saying that he says now?
Well, I mean, I think that's definitely in there, right? And that's a really fascinating figure of speech, and of course it pops up all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
right? In this case, I think what he's saying is that you are obligated to more than just yourself now, right? You're obligated to posterity, right? Because you are so awesome and so hot that you owe the world another version of you, right? Have a kid. You owe it to everyone. But there's definitely also that you're my love, so your obligation is to me,
Mm-hmm.
and that love makes you, in some sense, not just your own anymore. It makes you mine. And I've never been sure if I'm comfortable with that as a metaphor.
Yeah.
Like, and even something as simple as like, well, she's my girl, right? Or that's my boy right there, right? Like, it just feels a little like possessive is one thing, but it feels a little like almost inhuman.
Yeah, it does feel like, but I feel like he did it on purpose because,
Oh, of course.
that makes us more interested. We're like, wait, you just say he's mine? Like,
Yeah.
are you taking like ownership of this boy now?
Right.
But I think he meant it to be like so that we would feel that way.
Right. But I mean, like, do you think it's even meant for us to think it's controversial? Like, you hear it all the time.
I think he knew. I think he meant for us to feel it. He might have not meant it. He might have literally just wrote it so that the readers would feel something.
Right. Right. But I mean, like, it's so common for someone to say, like, yeah, well, she's my girl, right? Like, not, she's my friend, but like my belonging to me,
Mm-hmm.
my
Yeah.
girlfriend, my lover. And it's like it's such a small thing, but it feels in some way like too possessive. Like, no, she's not yours,
Like,
she's her own.
You are no longer yours. Like, if someone said to me, I'd be like, no,
Yeah.
I own myself.
Yeah. Yeah. I've always tried to stay away from that, and it's just like it feels a little uncomfortable. And people are quite sure that Shakespeare plays, like, he's very conscious of what number sonnets he says certain things in, right? Like numerology has always been kind of a big obsession with certain people, but it's relevant that this is number 13. Like, 13 is an important number. Like, 63 is another big one. 49. Numbers that are squares and things like that. Numbers that are primes and stuff. Like, he's very likely organizing this so it is number 13. And the fascinating thing is, the address of Dear My Love comes in line 13 of Sonnet 13. So, I mean, and just like the level of craft that takes, like, for him to put important things in 13 and 49 and 60 and stuff like that, like, he was thinking of everything.
Not from the stars do I my judgment pluck, and yet methinks I have astronomy, but not to tell of good or evil luck, of plagues, of dearths, or seasons' quality. Nor can I fortune to brief minutes tell, pointing to each his thunder, rain, and wind, or say with princes if it shall go well, by oft predict that I in heaven find. But from thine eyes my knowledge I derive, and constant stars, in them I read such art as truth and beauty shall together thrive. If from thyself to store thou wouldst convert, or else of thee, this I prognosticate. Thy end is truth's and beauty's doom and date.
I really like some of the language in this one. Nor can I fortune 2 brief minutes tell. Like that just the language is so beautiful there. Pointing to each his thunder, rain, and wind. Nor can I fortune 2 brief minutes tell, pointing to each his thunder, rain, and wind. Or say with princes, if it shall go well, by oft predict that I in heaven find. Or else of thee, this I prognosticate. Thy end is truth's and beauty's doom and date. Like, how powerful is that? And of course, like, there are 2 things that really stand out to me in terms of other things Shakespeare wrote. Brief minutes, right? Doesn't that sound kind of like Macbeth's tomorrow and tomorrow and tomorrow? Out, brief candle. But this, like, brief minutes, brief candle, that's where I took the inspiration for the name of the show, Our Brief Hour, right? Both in terms of, like, this actually is an hour-long show, but also, we have a brief amount of time on Earth. And for some reason, that adjective really works for me, like brief minutes. They're just minutes, right? Every minute is the same, but they feel brief sometimes. And then, or else of thee, this I prognosticate. There's a famous line in Richard II, the first of Shakespeare's second set of history plays, leading up to the Wars of the Roses, this awful civil war in England. The Bishop of Carlisle stands up in court as they're trying to depose Richard II, and this act that might or might not be illegal, that he says is going to cause these untold issues. He says, if you go through with this I prophesy, that the blood of Englishmen shall manure the ground for years to come, right? And that this I predict, right? And it just feels so powerful.
So what do you think he's predicting in this? Because I see, like, he says he has astronomy, so, like, but not to tell of, like, luck, but he's predicting something else, which I don't know what. Does he say eventually what
yes.
because I didn't catch up what he was predicting, like, that thy end is truth's and beauty's doom and date. So is he saying that you won't find, like, the truth about yourself or, like, life or, like, until you die?
What I think he's saying is that if you die without having kids, that's going to be the moment that truth and beauty leave the world. I'm predicting that your death, if you don't have kids, is going to kill beauty and truth in the world, which is another pretty strong thing to say. And where is he getting that knowledge? Right, this is a classic sonnet thing. Where is he getting it from?
From the stars.
Close.
Or from...
Well, and not from the stars do I my judgment pluck.
Oh. Because he's saying he thinks he has astronomy. So he's getting from himself. He's comparing, like, yeah, you can see, like, the future in the stars. There's, like, I forgot what they're called. Like, you know how there's, like, shapes in the stars? What's that called? Constellations. Yeah. Like, how they, like, can tell the future sometimes. Like, he's saying that he has that in his mind.
Right. Yeah. And astronomy was a big thing back in the day. Like, there were royal astronomers who were employed to tell princes their futures. But he's employing this really common comparison between stars and eyes, right? He's saying, I can't tell the future from the stars, but what I can tell the future from is thine eyes. Looking into your eyes gives me the knowledge I need of the future. And it's like, what a beautiful thing to say. I think a lot of, so we're going to hit this when we get to Sonnet 18, which is, like, maybe the most famous of all. I think a lot of the sonnet stuff feels a little trite, at least to me, and this is, like, a hugely unpopular opinion. But that line I find very compelling.
Yeah.
Not from the stars do I my judgment pluck, but from thine eyes. That's how I tell the future. It's written in your eyes that you are so beautiful and so true that the world is going to be the poorer when you die. When I consider everything that grows holds in perfection but a little moment, that this huge stage presenteth naught but shows, whereon the stars in secret influence comment. When I perceive that men as plants increase, cheered and checked even by the selfsame sky, vaunt in their youthful sap, at height decrease, and wear their brave state out of memory, then the conceit of this inconstant stay sets you, most rich in youth, before my sight, where wasteful time debateth with decay to change your day of youth to sullied night, and all in war with time for love of you, as he takes from you, I engraft you new. That's one of my favorites. I really like that one. I like 14 and 15 a lot. Holds in perfection but a little moment. I don't know why. I guess I'm such a sucker for mentions of little moments and brief minutes and things like that. Mm-hmm. That everything that lives holds in perfection but a little moment. Right?
Like the sunset, like the blooming of a flower. It's like for only a very short amount of time.
Right. But that the idea that each life has a moment of perfection or is a moment of perfection, I think is really powerful. And of course, we get another, all the world's a stage, right? That this huge stage presenteth naught but shows, whereon the stars in secret influence comment. Like you just said, he doesn't really buy astronomy, right? Mm-hmm. The only truth is in your eyes. But life is a stage upon which the secret stars are playing out their little schemes. Like that's a really interesting thing to say.
Well, I think it's true on stage. Like, I mean, I'm sure like a lot of plays like have messages. Like that's what most plays are, unless it doesn't have a fourth wall, right?
What,
like they want to set like most plays like they write it so that the audience can feel something or learn something. Right. So he's saying, so like I guess that gives him space to put like his opinion like to the world secretly.
Right. That's actually that's a really kind of gnomic comment, right? Like if life is a stage, what is it to break the fourth wall? Mm-hmm. What is it? Like I mean, seriously, that's not a rhetorical question.
What is to break the fourth wall? That's when it's when the audience like knows that like they don't suspend their
disbelief.
Yeah, disbelief. They like know it's a play, and like the actors come out of characters and stuff, and like so that's not important. They don't want them to like feel bad or feel sympathy for any of the characters.
Well, but so I mean, yeah. So the idea is that in typical, in like classical theater, what you're looking at is a room. Like the stage is like a room, or cage of some sort. Like you're watching things going on in a zoo or something. And you're imagining that the back of the stage are three walls of the room, and the fourth wall is invisible. It's what you see through, right? So you, the audience, are voyeurs, looking in on something happening where the people acting don't know that you're looking in on them, right? But if you break the fourth wall, if you break down that imaginary wall between you and the audience and interact with the audience, that's what breaking the fourth wall is. But what he's saying is, when he says this huge stage, what he's talking about is the world itself, right? All the world's a stage, and all the men and women are merely players, right? So the world is our stage, and we're actors, right? And the stars are the authors that have written our lives. So we're acting out their ideas, right? So like the star is Shakespeare, and you and I are Hamlet and Ophelia or Gertrude, or I don't know, maybe you're the gravedigger or something, or I'm the gravedigger. Right. So if that's the case, I mean, I don't want to leave this comment.
Yeah.
If we're actors, then what does it mean to break the fourth wall?
That's going to like some philosophy thing. Like no, seriously, if you think it makes you really, really think. I'm trying to. If we were all actors and we broke the fourth wall, that means that we'd probably see our maker.
Possibly.
Because if we are in a play, then who wrote the play?
Right.
Which is, and if they are saying that someone wrote a play, then that's determinate. That means
Yeah.
like everything we do, no matter what, like it's gonna happen. What's
Right.
gonna happen is gonna happen.
Right, teleological.
Yeah.
So like the stars, like, and of course, part of this is that Shakespeare is very subtly comparing himself to a star, right?
Yeah.
Like the stars are the ones
Okay.
who wrote our plays, which means like, well, in a like plays written in the real world are written by stars, like Shakespeare. But like, yeah, who are you interacting with if you break the fourth wall of your own life?
Your make
The stars. Well, but not everyone
the
in the
people
audience.
who are watching. There's no one.
Right. So who's watching us?
I don't know who's watching
It's
us.
pretty cool. Maybe the or maybe the future generations. So
yeah.
like
The readers. I guess
the way we
future.
read history. So in that case,
That makes sense.
a time capsule is breaking the fourth wall, which is so interesting because that's what Shakespeare says he's doing. Right?
Mm-hmm.
He's writing sonnets to tell future generations. I mean, like explicitly how awesome the youth is, but implicitly how awesome Shakespeare is for writing these awesome poems, right? And that's what he says in the last line. All that time takes from you, I engraft you new. I give it to you. I make you constantly young with my poems. This time capsule is what's breaking the fourth wall. And I'm going to tell everyone, as you strutted and fretted your hour upon the stage, you were the best there was, right? You put Marilyn Monroe and Cary Grant to shame. Or who's a famous, like, really attractive actor? Ryan Gosling?
Mm-hmm.
Right? Like,
Matthew McConaughey.
Really?
What?
Really?
What do you mean? Really?
I don't know.
I don't know.
Wasn't he like the romantic comedy guy like 10 years ago or something?
I don't know. I do like him as an actor. So many people don't, but I do.
Well,
He's good.
okay, you make Matthew McConaughey look like an ugly duckling, right?
He was great in Interstellar. If you saw that,
I don't know. I have
was
a
great.
thing about popular sci-fi.
it was amazing
Interstellar. All right, I'll have to check it out.
because it makes it makes like sense. Because I'm really interested in the universe, and I used to be a bio major, because I'm like so interested in that and like time and like things like that, and like everything that they're saying, like it could be true, and that's why I liked it so much because like that could actually be the case in our universe.
All right,
So-
I'll have to check it out. I ran across a one-woman play that I'll have to read it over more closely, but it's about Emily Dickinson. It's called Aberration of Starlight, and it might be kind of reflections on the universe, so it might be something that's up your alley.
Mm-hmm. But wherefore do not you a mightier way make war upon this bloody tyrant, time? And fortify yourself in your decay with means more blessed than my barren rhyme? Now stand you on the top of happy hours and many maiden gardens yet unset. With virtuous wish would bear you living flowers, much liker than your painted counterfeit. So should the lines of life that life repair, which this, time's pencil, or my pupil pen, neither in the inward worth nor outward fair, can make you live yourself in eyes of men. To give away yourself keeps yourself still, and you must live drawn by your own sweet skill.
Who will believe my verse in times to come if it were filled with your most high deserts? Though yet heaven knows it is but as a tomb which hides your life and shows not half your parts. If I could write the beauty of your eyes, and in fresh numbers number all your graces, the age to come would say, this poet lies. Such heavenly touches ne'er touched earthly faces. So should my papers yellowed with their age be scorned, like old men of less truth than tongue, and your true rights be termed a poet's rage, and stretched metre of an antique song. But were some child of yours alive that time, you should live twice in it and in my rhyme. It's been a theme since classical antiquity, and probably even before that you achieve immortality by having kids, right? Having successive generations. Mm-hmm. I don't know. Do you think that's true?
Yeah, definitely. That's a piece of technically that your genes are in that child. So you technically a piece of you is still living on.
Right. But like along those lines, tell me the name of your great grandparents.
I know I only know one of my great-grandparents because she was alive till I was 13. Her name was Paulina, and that's my confirmation name.
Got it. But like,
yeah, but that's it.
yeah, so do the future generations really remember you? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, can you tell me what went on in your great grandparents' lives?
I could with my one
With
that I know.
Paulina, right?
She got married. She had 9 siblings. Got married when she was 17 to leave the house. Got divorced, and then married from an Italian man. Then married a Polish man, and she was just really religious. That's all I remember about her. Oh, and when she went to school, she got expelled because she punched her teacher in the face. I know some stories about her. Yeah.
That's something to live on forever.
Yeah, right.
Like, yeah, she's going to be remembered to future generations.
She was crazy.
For assaulting a teacher.
She will.
But like that's kind of sad.
Yeah.
All your other great grandparents, all mine, like, their deeds aren't remembered, sadly. So do you really achieve immortality by people talking about you, by having kids? Like your ungrateful kids forget you.
Mm-hmm.
Or for that matter, like it's not even an act of malice. They just, right? Well, you can't know someone else's life.
If you think of it this way, if you were to eliminate one of your great grandparents, if they were to never been born, you wouldn't be here. So if you think about it that way, technically it kind of is immortality, because if they weren't living, then now you wouldn't be living, and the future generations wouldn't be living. So what is living then now?
Right.
Must be immortality in some way,
True. So I mean, I guess, but like, they're not remembered by name. They're just kind of like anonymously preserved in the sense that right. So like they just have to feel good about sort of gifting you to the future, even though you're not going to remember them to thank them.
Yeah.
No, nor is anyone else going to remember your great grandparents and be like, Alexa's alive, and that's because Paulina gave her to us. All right, here we go. This is a biggie, and it's all yours.
Okay. Shall I compare thee to a summer's day? Thou art more lovely and more temperate. Rough winds do shake the darling buds of May, and summer's lease hath all too short a date. Sometime too hot the eye of heaven shines, and often is his gold complexion dimmed. And every fair from fair sometime declines, by chance or nature's changing course untrimmed. But thy eternal summer shall not fade, nor lose possession of that fair thou owest. Nor shall death brag thou wanderest in his shade, when in eternal lines to time thou growest. So long as men can breathe or eyes can see, so long lives this, and this gives life to thee.
Okay, so what do you think of the famous "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day"?
Well, once again, he's talking about how he really does think that this person's going to be remembered in like hundreds and hundreds of years from now, which is interesting because he predicted that and he was right. Like that's a pretty like big thing to predict. Like what I mean? Like how did he know he was going to be like this famous? Like from what I mean? And that everyone will experience his beauty through this sonnet.
Right, like in one sense, it's a pretty ballsy thing to do. It's like
it is.
Babe Ruth calling his shot or
It
something. But on the other hand, like it's kind of a high percentage thing to do anyway, because if he says they're gonna remember you, and no one does, like who's ever gonna know, that he was boasting and it turned out to be an empty boast, right? So it's like you win if you say it, but you don't lose if you say it either, and it's not true.
It's true.
Okay, so here's my unpopular opinion. You ready? Brace yourself.
Okay.
I'm really not a fan of this sonnet, and I have a lot of trouble with these sonnets in general because it feels like the form is such that a lot of the sentiments are kind of trite and manufactured. Like it doesn't feel organic to me. It feels like the passion is manufactured because it's like these incredibly sweet things to say, but it feels like he just has to fill space, and sometimes he does it better than other times. What do you think of it?
Honestly, like I don't think it's more special than the other ones we read.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. I mean, I don't think it's. I mean, I like it. Sure, I like it. Why not? But I don't think it really stands out. Especially out of all the ones we read so far, I wouldn't say this is the one that stands out the most to me.
Interesting. It's the things that I find myself appreciating most about the sonnets, and maybe this is going to change, over time. Like people's opinions certainly change about these things the farther we go with them. The things I like are the thought-provoking turns of phrase, like the really beautiful word combinations, and the little moments, the brief moments, if you will, that it's sort of like epigrams in a way, I guess. Like those are the things that stick with me, not the overall meaning of the sonnet. Like I'm not particularly wowed by 14 lines comparing a person to a summer's day, right? But what I'm wowed by is half a line or a line and a half or stuff. Like my favorite
the language used, or like
exactly.
Yeah.
My favorite of all is 138, and we'll get to that a lot later on. And by this point, he's introduced a character called the Dark Lady, who the youth is more interested in, and the speaker himself is kind of interested in her too. And it's this whole mess, and it's like people get unhappy. Like as soon as a woman comes into things, everything gets screwed up. But the couplet in that, the poem is about the way that we lie to each other for the sake of our own ego, and the couplet is, "Therefore I lie with her and she with me, and in our faults by lies we flattered be." And I mean, for some reason that really resonates with me, and maybe it's because I'm just incredibly cynical, and it's like I have a pessimistic view of love or something. But the double meaning of the love, I lie with her and she with me, like I picture them lying in bed, it's sort of like in this uncomfortable silence where she knows that he's making stuff up and he knows that she's making stuff up. But that last line, "In our faults by lies we flattered be," like this acknowledgement that no one is perfect, that we love each other despite our faults, that they flatter us, they make other people impressed with us, but at the same time we know they're lies. Like we know that no one is the person they present in public, and at the same time we know that they're not, that we're never going to know them the way that we know ourselves. So in a sense that we can only love a lie because we're only ever going to know a bit of the person. So there are lies by omission in our knowledge of every individual. And I don't know if we're like those two lines really, really, I think are really powerful. But the whole and I like the whole sonnet as a whole, but like I could do without the first 12 lines because I think the power is in those last two lines. And so the line, "Shall I compare thee to a summer's day?" Like great, awesome, beautiful, but do we know that do we need lines 2 through 14 to really drive home that line any farther? To me, it feels like the sonnet form kind of makes it feel trite, or maybe it's not the sonnet form. Maybe it's just writing in general. Like I don't know. Let's finish with 19 and 20. 20 is the big one, and I really like 20, and 20 is incredibly controversial. So you do 19, and I call 20.
Devouring time, blunt thou the lion's paws, and make the earth devour her own sweet brood. Pluck the keen teeth from the fierce tiger's jaws, and burn the long-lived phoenix in her blood. Make glad and sorry seasons as thou fleetest, and do whatever thou wilt, swift-footed time, to the wide world and all her fading sweets. But I forbid thee one most heinous crime. O carve not with thy hours my love's fair brow, nor draw no lines there with thine antique pen. Him in thy course untainted do allow for beauty's pattern to succeeding men. Yet do thy worst, old time. Despite thy wrong, my love shall in my verse ever live young.
All right, this one has had people scratching their heads for centuries. A woman's face with nature's own hand painted hast thou, the master mistress of my passion. A woman's gentle heart, but not acquainted with shifting change, as is false woman's fashion. An eye more bright than theirs, less false in rolling, gilding the object whereupon it gazeth. A man in hue, all hues in his controlling, which steals men's eyes and women's souls amazeth. And for a woman wert thou first created, till nature as she wrought thee fell a doting, and by addition me of thee defeated, by adding one thing to my purpose nothing. But since she pricked thee out for woman's pleasure, mine be thy love, and thy love's use their treasure. So what's he saying?
Is he comparing the boy to a woman?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. He's saying like has all the beauty of like the woman, like that has the same like heart as a woman, and he gets the attention of not only this boy. It gets attention not only women but also men.
Exactly.
So that's how like amazing he is.
Right. Exactly. Mm-hmm. He's as hot as a woman is. He's hotter than women, but he's also awesomer than women because he doesn't use makeup. He doesn't roll his eyes. He's not false. Like, that's what women are. Like, yawn. So nature made you as a woman. Like, you're hot enough to be a woman. But she loved you so much that she turned you into man at the last minute, right? Because you deserved to be more than a woman. But in that moment, she defeated the speaker by adding one thing. Right? Of course. What did she add? She pricked him out. I always think of like she pimped him out, right? She pricked him out. Like pimp my ride, pimp my young man. So women get to use you for sex, but I get to use you for love. And it's this really interesting dichotomy that truly did, at least in theory, exist in the 16th century, the late 16th century. There's this famous essay written by a guy named called On Friendship by Michel Montaigne, which is about how there can only be true love between two men because men are deep and thoughtful and they are capable of philosophy, so they can bond with each other on the emotional level, but also on the mental level, and like you can't have that bond unless it's all in one. So like women, you can have sex with and you can have the bond of lust, but men, you can have the bond of true love, right? And so who knows if this actually is true or if this is just kind of wishful thinking of the time. And that's something that people have never been sure about because that love doesn't often exist between men, or at least they don't want to admit that it exists in more common times, right? You get like the, man, you're awesome, no homo.
And also back then, like, women weren't even like people. So like they were like, oh, they're not capable of love.
But the question here is the love the speaker is expressing erotic in nature?
Maybe at the last line.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's right. And it doesn't get, like, I didn't think it was erotic until, the last line, definitely.
Right. What about the second line, too? He calls the youth the master mistress of my passion.
Oh, yeah, okay. But even, I just feel like, that one, it's like, okay, I would let that pass if that was the only line in it. That, like, almost crossed the line. Right. But, yeah, I can see that.
It's something that's baffled people for years. And, for my own sake, my suspicion is that Shakespeare intended there to be that ambiguity. I don't particularly care if Shakespeare was gay or not, or if he was bisexual. I don't think that the love that he wants to express here as the speaker's love for the youth is solely, obviously it's not solely homoerotic. And I think that it's probably genuinely more platonic in nature. But I definitely think that Shakespeare wanted to have that hint. So, I don't know. That's a nice kind of thought-provoking one to end on. So we got the procreation sonnets. We heard as many masturbation jokes and semen jokes as we could possibly hear. We definitely learned that the youth is hot enough that he should have kids. Mm-hmm. And we learned that the speaker may or may not be fantasizing about getting in his pants. All right. Thank you, as ever, for coming on. This will be a long and ongoing sonnet project, which I'm really excited about. Enjoy your Friday, everyone listening. Thanks for tuning in. I'm Zach Davis, and this is Alexa Farnese for Our Brief Hour. Enjoy your Friday, enjoy your weekend, and take care.
Goodbye.